We're back.
From a variety of locations. You've been all over creation.
And uncreation. But we were most importantly at Car Week.
Yes.
And
the week of cars. The week made primarily of cars.
Yeah. It was great to have Straiton there, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago, because he was like, yeah, you're right. This is like, the main event is like Villa d'Este, but Villa d'Este is one event, and that's it. This is like a week of complete overload.
Yes, it's
in mostly
diffuse.
the best way. Yeah, mostly the best way possible.
So in this episode, we will discuss our experiences at Car Week. We'll get a little philosophical about the origins of car enthusiasm.
You will.
I will. You will talk about Volkswagens.
And my Lotus shirt.
And your Lotus, which is no longer with us.
It's with us, but not with me.
Yes.
I got dumped by Lotus. And you were going to talk about market trends. Or something else. Whatever it is. We talk a lot about cool shit. But we're really exhausted, so don't hold us to any of this.
Well, this is what is this? Carmudgeon
Oh, I'm
show?
making you do it. Yes.
Part of the Haggerty Podcast Network.
And if you like this content, you might consider joining the Haggerty Drivers Club, which includes unlimited access to our valuation tools, unlimited roadside assistance that is guaranteed to be on a flatbed for all of your classic cars, some special events, concert, subscription to the award-winning magazine, and far more. There's a link below if you'd like to subscribe. And Derek is going to clap. Is it because you're a lefty that's weird?
Okay. Let's not get into this.
Yeah, probably not. But you guys could see that argument on the Bring a Trailer comments.
Oh,
anyway,
yes.
Bye. I'm putting lotion on so that I can be the backup clapper. I think that was the start of the episode.
We just clapped, though. Remember?
You did, but maybe we have to clap again. Maybe you'll say something applause-worthy.
Okay, let's not get carried away with overpromising on this episode of the Carmudgeon Show.
How was Sunday's Concours d'Elegance?
I don't know. I didn't go.
Me neither. I don't know anyone who went.
Oh.
Yeah, this is...
I mean, a lot of people go. It's worth attending. I was just so burnt out. Plus, we had to leave the very next day for a shoot.
Yeah. So if you hear us bitching a lot and/or we look very tired and ill, it's because after
more than usual,
more so than usual. After the busiest week of the year, we stupidly went down and filmed an Icons and a Cooter and dragged Derek down. You were there for 2 days, right? Yeah. Fun times.
The desert days.
The desert days. Oh, it was only 104 the first day.
Yes.
And then 101 the next day. Nice and cool.
Yes.
I think Aunt Esposito and I had a conversation after the first day, and we're like, all right, I think the new plan is let's film in the winter. And then we remembered it snowed there while we were filming GR Corolla with 50-mile-an-hour winds. And there were 70-mile-an-hour winds, I think it was, peak, when we did the ultimate lap battle. And we're like, no, that was worse. So now we're thinking, all right, maybe
shoulder season,
summer and winter, we'll do Revelations. And we're going to get air conditioning and heat in this building finally. So it'll be like usable. Because the last time when we did LFA, it was 100, peaked at 110 in here.
Even with the insulation.
Yeah. Well, the insulation keeps the heat in. With the lights give off heat.
Because I remember, the lights giving off heat. Because I remember at ECME, we added insulation and the temperature went down by like 15 or 20 degrees on an otherwise identical day.
It would routinely the problem was that we were in here all day with, the big problem comes in the afternoon when we swap a car in that has been sitting outside in the sun. It's just basically one big coal lump.
Yeah.
But it's much, much, much better. But in the previous shoot we did was in February, and you could see my breath. So this time it was so hot that the vapor for the smoke machine dispersed immediately. And I asked a friend who was a DJ, and he's like, yeah, no, there's a point at which the dew point gets so hot that the smoke just goes away. He's like, you can't. It's usually 105 or so. I'm like, yep, that tracks. So you have to keep nightclubs cooler than that. I'm like, yeah, so no one dies. But so it was, we couldn't do the smoke effect this last one because it was too hot. And the previous one, it was too cold that you could see my breath. So we had to do everything we could to warm it up because it would be a little bit weird. Like, hi there, I'm talking about the insert name of car. And you're like, why is he foaming at the...
He's really excited. Yeah. Or he needs new piston rings.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of blow by. So yeah, we just kind of think we decided we're like, all right, if we can manage this Revelations in the climate controlled studio, spring, summer, and winter, and Cooter and Icons outside when it's like maybe 80, like between 50 and 85 or 90 instead of like either snowing or
that's the dream.
Yeah, it'll never work, but we can fantasize.
Sure.
But yeah, you're well rested? You survived Car Week?
I survived Car Week. I did rest afterwards for like a night. Yeah, before jumping back in. But it is, ultimately fun. It's a lot of work, but it is fun work.
This year wasn't fun for me. I think I was just
at Car Week.
I went and burned out from Straiton. So I mean, the thing is, I have a let me
condemnee.
Nothing against him, but I had the week before was the sort of last week for me to write 2 scripts for that Cooter and for the Icon. Mm-hmm. So I was running like a lunatic mentally to try to write 2 scripts plus get all the rest of the production stuff pre-pro done, which is arranging cars, and cars drop out and whatever else. And of course we have Jake and Liv, our producers, that were really helpful on this one. I did very little of that, but it's still hand holding and insurance issues. There's always issues. So I had that going on while I had a Serbian destroying my house and my warehouse and my whole life. Kidding. And he was like working crazy hours, and I was always trying to be on call to be there. Like I could, if he couldn't find something in the shop. And then from that to Car Week to the videos, I was just, I'm done.
Jason is here forthwith announcing his retirement.
I considered it a lot over this past weekend. By the time I got home, I was like, you know what? I need to retire. And then I looked at my bank account.
Guys work really hard on those shoots. Like, it's a real slog. Like, it's like depart the house at 6:30 and it's like 100 degrees. And it's like, I don't know. For me, it was like I would sweat through clothes. They would dry and then I'd sweat through them. Like, it was like just by the end of the day, it's so exhausting. So.
And we did it. Really, listen.
You do 4 days in a row of that, and then stuff
with a travel day on either side.
And,
I mean, we closed down a road that we paid Film LA to close down for us, and we paid cops to be there, and everyone knew from the film commission. And this sounds like bitching about like the best job in the world, but this is what happens on the back end. We get to our Airbnb. The driveway is about a 900% grade. Like it worked fine. And then Ant and I are like, all right, let's go side scout for the turnout that we rented so that we can park the cars and like sort of set up, cameras and stuff. We couldn't get there because the only road there was closed. And it was 1.2 miles from our Airbnb where Film LA knew we were staying because we told them that to this road. And the road was closed for construction. And so we sat there for 20 minutes and then we got out of the car and went over to the flagger guy. And he was super cool. Like we just started joking around and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, we'll open it every 20 minutes for a minute, let traffic through and then wait 20 minutes and then open it every 20 minutes after that, the opposite direction. And we're like, okay, this doesn't work for us because we need to get a quarter mile down the road past where it was closed off. And that's a 40-minute round trip at best from the Airbnb. Like that, we can't do that. So we had to relocate the entire production to this turnout that we were not permitted to use with tents and generators and all the other shit that we need. And it was just like, are you kidding? So we're telling him this. We're like, oh, we're so fucked. We're so fucked. We have like all these old cars and whatever. And he's like, oh man, could be worse. Insert name of car company was here yesterday where there was a lady in a cowboy hat that went so fucking berserk the police came and then she screamed at them until they gave her permission to use a different section of the road. She permitted, or they had permitted the section of the road that was closed. At least we permitted a different road. But I'm like, there has to be some sort of government organization that's controlling like PG&E is here cutting trees today and Caltrans is here repaving and such has happened. No one knows. So you rent a stretch of road. You're like, okay, I have exclusive use for this. I'll put cops on both ends. When we say professional driver closed course, we mean it. But this time it was actually closed. Yeah.
By the construction.
By 4 different construction crews. There were 4. One was a fire mitigation people, one was PG&E, one was Caltrans, and I don't remember what the 4th one was. There were 4 different fucking things happening. Anyway, it's always something. Nobody died. We had fun. The episodes are going to be great. Not telling you.
Car survived.
Yep. We're not going to talk about what it is yet. Although, one of them the Cooter might be out within a week or so. Is this episode going live within a couple days of us recording this, or is it being held?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not saying a word. Never mind. Y'all can wait. Sorry. Spoiler alert. I'm not giving you a spoiler alert. I have a very specific TV T-shirt. Jesus Christ. T-shirt, not
Welcome.
TV shirt.
This is the Carmudgeon Show. It's Monday. We
gonna
record this
start this
every
over?
week.
We're gonna start
I was just orienting you.
I have my Lotus shirt on in celebration. It's a celebration of life from my dearly departed Lotus.
You sold the Lotus.
You
Yes.
sold the
Oh,
Lotus.
yes, that's right.
Okay. I've been friends with you for 10 years-ish. Give it 10, 12, I don't know.
12.
Along 12. Somebody keeps track. Did I miss our anniversary?
No, it's in October.
Was it really? You would know this because you know all dates. Seriously?
Yeah, we met around the date of your birthday.
Fuck, do you remember that? Anyway, I just
always remember
you,
everything.
You showed up at my house and you're like, here, drive my car. And I was like, you're an idiot. And I proceeded to do terrible things on the way to a pool party.
Yeah, it was
fun.
fine.
Yeah, you still have the car. We have the car again. Anyway, ever since buying the 850, have been saying, well, a car's got to go. I can't have this many cars. And we were here a couple weeks ago and I'm like, oh, fuck. You asked me if I'd sold the Lotus. And I'm like, no, I haven't got a chance to take pictures of it and blah, 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 blah. And you must have been, tell the truth. Were you just sick of hearing me bitch?
I don't even remember this happening.
Oh, really?
No.
We were here. We were in this office and you're like, you didn't sell the Lotus yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't had time to do anything. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'll sell it.
And I did, apparently.
In like one day at full hope price and whatever. And so apparently that's why you get paid the big or medium or whatever size dollars.
Yeah. The exposure bucks.
Yeah.
Which we are doing now.
The exposure. Well, listen, I will say that without having been paid in any way other than that was a really, really easy experience. I can see why people contract with the OTS Company. And they give you I literally handed you the car. You were here. And I'm like, well, just take it. And then you had a 124 wagon worth of spare wheels or spare tires and mufflers and all the original parts from the car and whatever else. And you drove away. And all I got was this shitty cashier's check, which has not cleared yet. So I hope you vetted the Spire.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So.
That was the easiest. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure. Sometimes even we don't get the key from the owner. The owner's just like, here's where the car is, go grab it.
I thought I was bad. It was filthy. It needed a smog. And you're just like, well, that's what we do.
Yeah, we solved all of that. That is what we do. I mean, I think that your car sells itself also, right? The cars that are hard to sell are the cars that have needs that are hopelessly priced. And, there's all kinds of excuses and thin markets. But this car, I think, you have created provenance and added value and taken really good care of it. And
it was a good car. It was a really good car. It was a tough thing to sell, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to keep it, and I really want an Elise in my fleet because it's the ultimate palate cleanser. I still think it's the best sports car of the traditional sports car definition ever produced, right? Mm-hmm. It's the most pure. It is exactly what it should be. It's the closest to exactly what it should be. This car owes me nothing. I had it for 8 years. It got upset at I had to replace a coil pack, which water got in. So, and just sort of corroded the spark plug attachment. That's it. I had to hold on. Something else happened.
Shock.
I think it had one bad shock from the factory, which is why the original owner spun it when he first got it. Because then I spun it. I never spun it all the way, but it used to do weird things, and brand new old stock shocks fixed that. But it owed me nothing. It started. It threw a check engine light once because I didn't tighten the gas cap all the way. Like, you can't ask for anything more than that for 8 years.
Yeah, especially for such a focused car.
Right. And the new owner is a Carmudgeon show listener, which was really cool. And I hope the first owner had it for 7.5 years. I had it for 7.5 years. Hopefully he has it for at least 7.5 years and brings him as much joy as it did to me. But so in celebration of my, I hate everyone.
You're wearing your black shirt. You're in mourning.
I'm in mourning. Now I got to figure out what car to put that plate on. Yeah, whatever. But thank you. In all seriousness, everyone.
My pleasure.
Everyone should hear how easy that experience was. And that's just not blowing smoke up your ass because you're standing right here. Because I'll talk behind his back once he leaves. No, easiest thing in the world. Here, have the keys. Here's a spare key. Here's a title. Go ahead, go forth. And
yeah, this is uncharacteristic for you. Normally you are...
I do everything.
Yeah, you maintain your cars yourself. You sell them yourself. You do everything yourself.
I control freak myself.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
yeah.
my pleasure. It was a very easy car to sell, and I'm glad it's gone to such an enthusiastic new home. And I hope that he was, I think, nervous about the car, and I hope that he sort of grows into it, or he breaks in that sort of apprehension that comes with such a intense car. It's a very intense car for someone who's hasn't owned a car with no bumpers before. Yeah. That's the part actually that's the scariest.
No. 2008 have bumpers
in the back.
In the back, in the back. 2008 and later, I should say. Yeah. It was an 09. Yeah, no, it's a fragile thing. Yeah. It's mechanically really robust. They don't break, right? The suspension stuff doesn't like fall apart, but like, you slam a door too hard and it'll break a window. So it's just that sort of learning to interact with a car that's 1,992 pounds with the supercharger and, all the other shit. But otherwise, once you're in it, it's big. It's got good visibility for a mid-engine thing. And I think he'll be great. I hope so. So.
As exotics go, it's one of the easiest to live with.
What exotic have you ever owned that didn't break in 8 years? I mean, didn't need anything. I did a timing chain tensioner because I didn't realize that they rattle just because Toyota, however the Toyota design is, they occasionally rattle on startup. And I'm like, I'll do it. It was like $13 because it's a Toyota part. Yeah. Like, I did oil changes. I did a tranny fluid swap. I did brake. I mean, it was other than basic maintenance. We're not talking like a $10,000 Ferrari timing belt. Yeah. It's amazing to have a car that focused, that performant, and that easy. So
it is a pretty unique piece. I guess they've gotten more expensive, especially for the really like extraordinary variants. This is a supercharged one. They made 287 or something like that. So like the supercharged ones are rare. Exesias are pretty valuable. But if you find like an early, like an 05 naturally aspirated car with a bit of mileage on it, I think they're pretty inexpensive, especially for what they are. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's still they're in their 40s, right? Probably at the bottom of the market.
Maybe high 30s, low 40s for an early car.
Yeah. 2005's had some headlight issues, and then
and they don't have LED rear lights,
and they don't have Probax seats, so they had uncomfortable seats. So 06 and newer are more desirable. And then 08 got a new dash, new key with a new immobilizer that didn't kill the battery overnight. Instead, it took 2 whole weeks. Mine was good. I got 3 weeks out of it before it started to get weak. But it's sort of continual improvement on those cars. But that's why I bought. And when I bought the car, I wanted the latest possible SC that I could get. And I didn't really want a black car because I just don't like cleaning paint. Yeah. And every one of my sports cars I've ever owned has been black. All of them.
Your little certificate I was noticing was saying that it was the 4th of 5 09 black SCs and the only one with both the sport and touring packs, which I thought was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Anyway, Car Week is what we're supposed to be talking about. I don't really remember what happened. It was like the sort of debutante year for our business, so we had a lot of programming for that, and I was pleased with how it went. It was also interesting to hear from people in industry who were like, you're doing a great job and building a lot of like visibility and brand. It's like, I'm really close to it. Of course, it consumes my thoughts. It's interesting to hear from outside observers how they perceive it. So that was fun. We took 2 cars to the Quail. One of them got an award.
You took 2 cool cars to the Quail.
Yeah. There's some stuff at the Quail where you're like, this guy's here with a Austin Healey. That's fine, I guess. We took weird stuff to the Quail. I was concerned they would be competing against each other, in the coach-built Ferrari class. But one of them they put in the like random coach-built class, and then the other one they put in the Ferraris class. So the 250 Europa didn't win anything, but there was like this incredible 340 there that deserved to win, certainly more than our car. But the car got exposed. It gave an excuse to drive and service the car, so that thing was neat. And then we got, for the weird Ferrari, the station wagon, shooting brake converted Ferrari. That car won the coach-built class and was just a pleasure to drive around in. Like, to me, I think it was like the ultimate Car Week car because it could not be confused for anyone else. If you drive around, even like in a red F50, for example, more about that anon, then you could be any number of red F50 since they built 350 of those cars and almost all of them are red.
And 3/4 of them are probably in Monterey for the week.
Yeah.
Gross exaggeration, obviously.
Like this happened to me last year when I was driving my Citroen because, I just get these texts where like, I saw you, because it's the only Citroen CX And the same thing with this coach-built, shooting brake Ferrari.
Well, I mean, admittedly, there are other Citroen CXs. No one was dumb enough to bring one to Car Week.
Yes,
that was.
I mean, they built over 1 million of those cars, and like the irony is that there's none at Car Week, and there's a bazillion choose random special Ferrari or moderately special Ferrari.
I love showing up in Car Week in something that you're the only one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've told the story of the year I brought the Scirocco and I was surrounded in a Bugatti rally.
Yeah.
And there are like Veyrons all over and like all these classic Bugattis. And the guys at a red light got out to take a picture of the Scirocco, which was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But they did make many of those cars. They did make many Rover SD1s. And the SD1 last year got attention.
Yeah.
Even the CSI this year got a shit ton of attention. I didn't think anyone would care about that car. But there is only one Croisette.
Yes.
And so anytime I saw you driving around, it was like, oh, look at that idiot. Like, where's he off to now?
Yeah. Well, and it was great because you could put stuff in it and you could seat 4 people in it. And so sometimes, there's 3 founders of my company. So it's like, it was a really useful device for getting around places. And
I feel
I would get random photos of myself going places sent to me.
Of course. You can't hide in that thing.
Yeah. But that's exactly what you want for.
I do believe that Straiton actually won Car Week.
Yes.
So if you guys didn't watch that episode, he runs a YouTube channel called M539 Restorations. He's based out of Frankfurt, Germany, but bought a totaled salvage title E60 M5 that had hit something on the highway and blew a hole in the oil pan. And over the course of 6 days, it was 6 total, just did
totally
everything to this car.
Unbelievable.
Lunatic shit. Like up until 4 o'clock in the morning, like my alarm system keeps tracking when the front door opens. And I'm like, he came in at 4 or like 3:52 and was back out at 7:41. And I never saw him. But he did this car right. And I would love to say he lucked out, although maybe he knows more. The car's really nice, it turns out, and it's all fixed. It's 100% functional, and the sticker package on that was such a heart tug for Sabina Schmitz. Those of you guys who are not watching watching this on YouTube, he did a vinyl sticker package that is a reproduction of the E60 M5 ring taxi that Sabina Schmitz drove, and then he had sort of a pixelated picture of Sabina with a quote on it. It was just really, really sweet.
Yeah.
And that car brought joy
because
everywhere.
hers was white.
Hers was white, yeah.
The one that she would give people rides around in was white.
And I think the plan is you're going to sell that, right?
Yeah, we will. He's, of course, fucked off back to Germany, has I'm sure, more stuff to do there, and has left an M5 for you, which means that he's left an M5 for me.
Please get it out of here.
to turn into money. But, I mean, the fundamentals, I think, are really good. It's interesting also to see a car with a salvage title with, we think, all original paint, because normally you associate that with some kind of catatrophic occurrence.
Or a flood or something
which
horrible.
Was, I mean, it did have a catastrophic occurrence, which was you need to do stuff to the motor. The motor has to be opened, and so he did rod bearings and the Vanos units.
The crazy thing is the engine didn't actually needed to. I mean, as it turns out, the rod bearings, it had 112,000 miles on it, I think. They were done. They were nearing the end of their life. But I mean, the crazy thing is this, whatever the person hit, which is probably a median because there was a little bit of asphalt in the sway bar bushing. He probably just hit a median or something, and it was lowered, or is still lowered. I think it's got.
Oh, is it?
I think it's got eye-box on the front because the car's got a bit of a rake up from the factory. So I think he just did the front. Sreten will tell you all about that. But whatever it hit, it fired the airbag. And that's probably what totaled it, because it's an airbag, it's a pretensioner for the seatbelt, and then it is a pyrotechnic battery connection in the back. But that's brilliant. That's what saved that car, because it punched a hole in the oil pan and then immediately cut power. Down. So as long as the guy didn't do 60 miles an hour down a huge hill for 10 minutes with the clutch out, the engine stopped probably almost immediately after it lost all oil. So there was no oil in the filter, no metal in the filter, none, which is amazing considering it was the oil pickup tube that got the direct hit. So Sreten opened up the oil pump and there's nothing in there, just oil. So fucking lucked out. That engine was probably, I would suspect, fully unharmed. So here you have a car with its original engine unfucked, its original interior unfucked, beautiful, original paint, and it has a salvage title, which is kind of not possible.
Yeah, which is why he bought it for no money and then put it in front of your warehouse for a few months and then sort of flew in and in 6 days packed in like a full rebuild of the car.
Yeah, he did suspension on it. He's neurotic.
Yeah.
Everything had to be done right. So somebody will wind up with what I think is the coolest E60 M5 in the world. Of course, it's also a manual of which they made like 1100 or 1300.
1364 or something like that. Yeah.
Only for the US. And so hopefully a bunch of people from Europe lose their shit over that car and go fight for it. And
great. We'll do our best to accommodate. We just got to spiff up a couple things like refinish the wheels and replace some rubber trim. And then it'll be ready hopefully around the same time that Sreten's content goes live. So
yep,
it'll be fun.
Very cool. But anyway, I think we're in second place for winning Car Week.
I mean, there's so much cool stuff down there.
There is, but find another Closet or Ring Taxi.
Yeah, I mean, but you could say that about any number of things that were down there. There was a lot of cool stuff like that Low-Tech, which was that Mercedes supercar thing that was like a one-off that was built in the early 90s with a blank open checkbook thing that has it's really wild looking. It's a supercar from the early 90s. It was one of the cars in the wedge class at Pebble Beach. There was a wedge class, which is interesting to see the evolution, as we previously talked about with Villa d'Este, about sort of how do you evolve the Concours product to remain relevant to the next generation of car collectors, especially as we can talk at some point, maybe now or later, about the market shifts that were sort of consolidated as the result of the auctions this year.
So a big part of this whole week is the auctions.
Yeah.
And this is one of the biggest weeks to sort of cement trends and sort of...
to make them publicly visible and like sort of inarguable, because it really makes... A lot of time the information is the issue about whether buyers and sellers all have information that's current about the state of the market, and big public auctions are a great way to get everybody on the same page in terms of the state of the market. I
sort of get a little bit weirded out by some of the auctions because you're watching car after car after car after car go across the block at prices that are just not only not attainable for normal people, but like unimaginable. Like, you're like an $800,000 car. Oh, that one's cheap because there's a 3 million and then a 10 million and a 2 million.
Yeah, or it's 800 is cheap because they used to be a million, or,
you're just like I was standing at one point at RM outside sort of looking at the cars going through, and there's a Chazetta. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And then, an XJ220, and I think, there was something behind it. There was just one nut bag car. There was that Commendatore 0108i or whatever the fuck it's called.
Isdera.
The Isdera. Yeah. Like, that's a manual dogleg V8 mid-engine Mercedes-based, holy fuck, and didn't sell. Mm-hmm. But so to me, it's just overload. But everyone was talking after all the auctions about Ferraris.
Yes.
And how...
Particularly vintage Ferraris. There were a lot of big Ferraris, and this is... been true for as long as I can remember, certainly 20 years or more, that the most expensive cars to sell in any year will be absolutely, without question, more than 50% of it will be Ferraris at the really top end of the market. And this means that cars that sell anywhere from like, generally in public, it's not more than $30 million to, down to maybe 10 or a little bit less than, $5 to $30 million, call it. And unequivocally, you will have 60, 70% of those cars will be Ferraris, and almost certainly they will be Ferraris that were built between 1950 and 1970. That's where all of the big expensive Ferraris live. And there was, everyone who is in the Ferrari world, which includes us because we have a Ferrari emphasis in our business, in large part because, one of my co-founders, they service those cars almost exclusively. So we lost the Carmudgeon logo on the TV as usual because
I forgot to plug it in.
TV product. Anyway, so to return to the subject at hand. So there were a lot of big, heavy Ferraris going through this year, and all of us who are sort of daily in the Ferrari world were like, oof, can the market absorb? We had data before showing that the vintage Ferrari market was a little bit soft, so we were all apprehensive about that. And then to sort of see the large number of like really significant Ferraris coming through, there were 2 330 GTSs alone at Gooding.
Which are worth...
Those are a mere $1.5 to $2 million. Okay. But also like there was a TDF and there was
I think you have to...
TDFs
even
are
I don't know what
$5-6 million. There was a 4-cylinder 500 TRC. That's like a $4-ish million car. There were
Do you guys see what I mean about like this whole like you just get numb to these prices? They're like, oh, that's cheap. It's $1.5 million. But then there's this one that's $5 million. They're like nuts.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way that this little portion of the market functions, and so just we were concerned because that part of the market has been weak, and there's a large number of them, and that proved to be the case. That I think a lot of big Ferraris didn't sell this year, and so stuff that used to be. Those used to be the absolute gold standard of cars. That was if you were selling those cars, everyone wanted to be you if you were selling those because they were the most collectible cars in the world.
Which means they were guaranteed to sell and always at a price that made everyone's eyes water, right?
Yes,
Whereas this time, my understanding is not only did 3/4 of the big cars not sell, but they
Ferraris.
were hundreds of thousands to $1 million below estimates.
Yes. And it's always tough to sell with these auctions. Different auction houses are better at this than others, but a lot of the times, you get the chandelier bid, which is not an actual real bid. It's the house bidding to make the number look less alarming. There's all kinds of stuff like this. It happens on Bring a Trailer too. It happens anywhere. Humans are humans, and you hate everyone because everyone is stupid and sucks. In summary, checks out. The Ferrari market is soft. There's a demographic shift. The people for whom those cars are so iconic and valuable, there are fewer of them in a buying mood, and the mood is shifting. The momentum, the center of gravity of the trade is shifting elsewhere to different stuff. And those types of cars did generally quite well. An all-time record was set for a Ferrari F50.
I was going to say, I watched that one happen. And everyone was shocked shitless that an F50 is now. I mean, because what were they sort of, what would you have guessed those cars were selling for?
That number didn't surprise me that much. Like it was maybe 10% high. Like so
which is still $500,000,
is
right?
correct, but 10%, is not wild. But we had a client who had a very similar car. That was U.S. cars are worth more because they're legal here in all states, and they only made 40 whatever of them or something like that. And so U.S. F50s are worth the most, certainly here. Compared to the Euro cars, because a significant, a seventh of the cars are U.S. cars, and you could register it in California, and there's a lot of money and enthusiasts here. And if they are original paint and they have all the fitted luggage with them, and they're well maintained and low mileage, then they don't come along too nice that often. And we had a client this year who had a similar car to that one, and I think wanted $5 million for it. So that number didn't really surprise me too much, but if there's not a lot of public data out there about it, then it can catch people who haven't been paying attention to that little corner of the market unawares. But so like all this to say the stuff that we always talk about, which is that the newer cars are very collectible, and there were some big Lamborghini sales. Lamborghinis used to be shot on roundly by the collector sphere, and now there's some that are getting expensive and that are desirable. Like a Murcielago SV stick, which they made like 7 of those. They're all of the. I mean, so the first year of the Murcielago in the United States was 2002. That's the LP 580. Those were all sticks. Then in 2004, they made the 2-pedal car available, and then there's very few stick shift Murcielagos after that. And so anything 2004 and later, it's statistically unlikely to find a stick shift. And the SV was the ultimate version of that car, the most powerful, the most outrageous. And so there were almost no stick SVs made. The number is, I think it's like 7 or 8 cars. They turn up almost never for sale. And those cars are deep into 7 figures, if you can find
As in one. High 7 figures? As in like 7, 8, 9 million?
No. Like, so a 640 is also rare. So the 3 variants are 580, 640, and the 670, which is the SV. And the 640 is rare as a stick. The early cars, are obviously all 02s and 03s are sticks. And so if you can find a 640 stick, that's quite unusual. And then 670 sticks.
They're a couple hundred.
They're a million.
They're that much?
Yeah, a regular Murcielago 580 stick is like 400 or 500. Okay. And then a 640 is like $1 million. And then SV, if you can find one, is like, it'll start with a 2 or 3.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can find one. So if you're paying attention to the little corners of the market where this stuff happens, then it's not too surprising. But that's where the major growth is happening in the market is sort of these later model cars. Later model meaning 40 years or less old.
So
40,
70
30,
stuff.
20.
How did 70 stuff do fare?
It's variable. Depends what it is. You know, if it's like a Jag XJS, not so good. But if it's like a Porsche Turbo, then those do pretty decently. And like Countachs do well. Ferrari Boxers less so. Those cars have been persistently, I think, cheap for what they are, but they have less cultural gravitas.
Right. So it's really the 80s, 90s, 2000s cars that are doing better.
Yeah.
And so my question is, of course, what does that mean? What does this like Ferrari bubble burst mean for the rest of us? Like for normal
Probably
cars?
nothing.
Probably nothing, right?
Yeah, probably
it's not like,
nothing.
But, well, I guess in the absence of the Lamborghini stuff doing so well, I would start to feel like, oh shit, we have a major market correction coming in. All sort of collector cars are going to pop. But it was only really that early vintage major money Ferrari segment that did that poorly. The rest of it was okay. So maybe it's just a shift away from Ferrari, double-digit $1 million cars, or is it indicative of a collector car?
I can't predict the future. There is definitely interest, and we talked about a few episodes ago when I did a market survey where I was saying that even these sort of mainstream cars that exploded upwards in 2022, those cars are down by, like I routinely see cars that sold for $25,000 in 2022 now sell for $17,000. So it's happening throughout. There are people who will always be interested in that stuff. I think a lot of it has to do with interest rates. It's expensive to get a loan right now. And so if you're getting a loan, it's really hard to rationalize spending that much on interest, getting that high of an interest rate. And so necessarily there's just fewer people who are participating. Is the bottom falling out? I mean, I don't think so. There's people who are interested in this stuff. They just can't afford it. It's coming down, or there's just fewer number of people because they've been removed because they can't get a loan or because they're, whatever the reason is. And so the numbers are down somewhat, which I'm perfectly fine with because I think it was stupid and overheated and like nonsensical in the past. So I think that if you are in a position to buy, then it's a good time to be shopping and buy what you like, right? In that segment of the market, you buy what you like, and the number of dollars you pay has to make sense for what the experience is that you get in exchange. These Ferraris operate in some other world where they are objects of art. They are historical artifacts. They are collector's items. They are instruments of speculation. They are all these things that have nothing to do with, how it functions as a car, which is frustrating for those of us who actually like driving them because you drive it and you're like, oh, this is really a great experience. It's a shame that it costs, $400,000 or $4 million or $40 million to have this experience because it's actually pretty fucking cool.
And no one ever drives them because they're worth so much.
Yeah, some people do, and then those people are really heroic, and we love those people. There's guys out there who are racing them at the historics, and you're just like, oh my god, please nobody have a pile up because it would be like a $500 million crash, and some of these guys will absolutely do stuff like that, but there's definitely guys who never use their stuff. It really depends. I mean, there's as much variability at that segment of the market as there is at the lower part of the market. You're just in the same way that. Some person's like, I don't really like to drive my car. I just polish it and I clean it. Or I never, I bought this thing new and it has 1,100 miles and I'm dumb or whatever their rationale is.
I'm glad you added that.
Where some people are like, I don't know. I think I washed this car like once, but that was like 11 years ago. And other than that, I put in oil sometimes. So there's like a full spectrum. So some of these guys let their cars sit. Others are like super fastidious about keeping after them in the same way that it happens at all segments of the market. So the Ferrari market is consolidating the upper end of the market. These guys are used to being able to sort of just print money with these cars and command and get whatever money they want for them. And those days are gone. They have to, if they want to trade hands, they have to be more realistic. And we deal with that.
Is it a temporary blip or those days are gone because everyone's aging out?
If I had to call it, if I had to guess, I think it's probably a permanent market shift. I think that the next generation the alphanumeric soup that is vintage Ferraris is not approachable, and the price isn't approachable, and people don't circulate those cars much. Young people are not having the formative memories associated with those cars that causes them to be persistently valuable. Privileged people will always have those experiences, and that's why something like an Alpha 8C 2900, which was, I think, in terms of significance and aesthetics and performance, the Ferrari F50 of the 1930s, those will always be valuable because it is such a high water mark for automobiles, both aesthetically and technically and experientially.
How many do they make?
I don't know, I have no idea.
Okay.
It's before my time.
But like
Dozens.
dozens? Okay, dozens, not hundreds or thousands.
Correct. No,
right?
no, absolutely not. And so that those really like iconic, important, defining cars, no matter the era, will always be valuable. This happens with even the brass era cars like Simplexes and frickin' what is the big American yellow car. The
big American yellow car.
This
is like a Great Gatsby thing.
No, before that. I want to say Marmon, but it's not Marmon. And anyway,
you're not talking about Cord anything.
No.
Okay.
There are certain you can see where the outer limits of my knowledge.
Finally, we got
yes,
it.
It's 1908, and so certain cars will always be really valuable. And there'll be a small number of them, and then the sort of pedestrian stuff becomes decreasingly valuable. And you see this in the land of Jaguars, for example, because they built 50-something thousand XKs and 72,000 E-Types, that there's just not enough people out there who are enthused about those cars to sustain continued values. And it's disappointing in some sense. I'm okay with it in others because it means that I could buy the stuff. Like I really would like to own an E-Type someday, and it's nice to see them returning to a place where I could be thinking about it, where I previously couldn't when they were $250,000 or $350,000.
Yeah.
So that's all fine. But so high volume cars of the eras that are not mainstream are going to definitely collapse.
Were there any huge positive surprises? I mean, if F50 wasn't a surprise at 5.5. Was there anything that really shocked you?
They're just sort of like random periodic things. Like, I don't know. I mean, this didn't hugely shock me because when stuff's super low mileage, people get really excited about it and behave irrationally. But there was like a R107 560 SL that sold for $230,000 because it had 120 miles on it or something like that.
I don't understand that one. I mean, I understand that 107s, I like them just fine. But why would you buy a car that's if it's that few miles, you know you're never going to be able to drive it?
This person was not intending to drive it.
Clearly not.
That's it. That's all. Yeah. It's totally.
You just want
inconceivable to me.
Yeah.
I don't get it either. But it's people buy things for different reasons. You know, this is the thing about cars that fundamentally I think is really freaking cool, which is that you can like cars for any. You know, I say this with some regularity. Some people like cars. Some people like driving. Some people like both. Some people, I guess, like neither, and then we hate them.
We don't like them.
But there are so many levels on which cars are appealing. You know, it's sense like the basic level. If you're talking like just human functions, you're like sensory, visceral. I like the way it sounds. I like going fast. I like the way it looks. You know, basically anything related to the five senses, probably not including taste, I imagine. I mean, what you do with your car is up to you, I guess. But basic, like sort of a basic human experiential level, like I just like the sensory inputs associated with cars. So like cars appeal on that level. They also appeal on a sort of like nerdy, intellectual, technical level where you're like, oh my God, internal combustion and dual overhead cams and cross-flow heads and, you know, whatever. Then it's like a sort of engineering object. And so then you're engaging like your sort of cerebral brain parts to engage with cars. And then there's like a sort of social part of it where it's like, well, this sort of is a really good representation of a school of thought that was really prominent in design in the 1930s. It's the representation of Art Deco. And then you're contextualizing the car in terms of like history and culture and like human activity. And so like cars have all of these layers. And that's before you get to like interacting with other people and using it as a sort of social interaction device also. And then you get to like, some people treat them as investments and some people use them for social media clout. There's the cars have a whole bunch of different things and different levels of interaction that humans can have with them. And that's part of the appeal. And so there's like coming to terms with the fact that there's people out there who just philosophically, fundamentally, like with their core fabric that composes who they are, approach cars differently. For me, like that is weird. And so these cars with 100 miles on them that someone clearly gets a lot of joy and value, and then it sells for a shitload of money. So it's like, who has the last laugh if they made $100,000 on it or whatever. So like it wasn't a dumb thing to do, clearly. So,
I mean, I guess whoever bought that car new and then never drove it certainly didn't make any money on it. You know, once you account for inflation. Yes. However, hopefully they got enough joy out of it. I like to drive cars. Although
I do too.
We both
that
had
makes
a
you
moment.
a certain category of automotive enthusiast.
I guess we should be inclusive and like people who don't.
We should, but that's
But interestingly enough, you and I both we both drove a car last week that shouldn't appeal to us at all, and that was that black Beetle. We drove a black '64 Beetle, and I got emotional in that thing. Like it really fucked with me. I want that car.
Yeah, it is a very and this, I say this all the time to people. It's just that if you were buying cars in a purely rational, instrumental sense, then you would buy something reliable that cost as little as possible to maintain, that never
Camry.
broke, and you'd end up with a Camry. Anything that's not a Camry is then an expression of humans behaving irrationally to, when you buy a new car and you're like, I'm going to buy a Mini instead of a Yaris, or, assuming they cost the same, which they don't. But, an expression of identity or self or values or philosophy, or I could never buy a Tesla because I hate the environment, or I hate Elon Musk, or I could never X, Y, or Z. It's a culturally relevant device that
You forgot
makes
to
statements.
shit on Subarus.
Oh yes.
Repeat that. I could never buy a Subaru because
I could never buy a Subaru because I'm not a geriatric jackass with my head up my ass.
Angry Derek
did that correctly deploy. What was I talking about? I've derailed myself.
Well, you went on a rant after
Irrational
the Beetle thing,
right? That people buy cars. The appeal of this stuff is all super irrational, and it's about making you the buyer, the interaction person, feel something,
right?
Whether that is a sensory something or an emotional something or a brain erection, if you're into the technical components of the car, whatever part of you that it is appealing to, it's not just a purely rational thing.
That's why the Beetle threw me for such a loop, because I'm so much about the driving experience, and it was just looking at and smelling and sitting texture in that car and just staring at it. I have to have a Beetle. Yeah. And it wasn't something I realized that I needed to have. And I can't. I'm not having a
Well, and this returns to the earlier episode that we had about the importance of travel, because we sort of pigeonhole ourselves into this sort of, I'm like this kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, wait, but I really like the Cyclone, and it's automatic, turbocharged, V6, four-wheel drive truck, and American, and all this shit that I shouldn't like, and somehow I do.
Did you memorize my list of things that I hate in the world and just
yes,
regurgitate
did I do?
You got them all.
Yeah, so there's this is again the importance of travel, and also like being open-minded to having new experiences. This is why the thing probably that I most love about what I do is getting to have these experiences with cars that I've never crossed paths with before, and like either finding something to like or being like, this is an absolute heap and I have no desire, and this is why I have strong outspoken opinions about this, that, and the other thing.
So here's a question: 64 Beetle or Pagani Zonda?
So
money's no object. What would you rather?
Zonda or Wyra?
Zonda. Which we're going to talk about next episode.
Yeah. I don't want to give away too much about next episode.
You just did, because you're
hesitating.
Yeah. Your answer should have been Zonda, and anyone, people who haven't traveled to Zonda land.
I mean, there's a lot of context dependent stuff about like how many other cars do I have? Like, where do I live? What am I going to use it for?
Right now.
Now.
I'm giving you a car. You can never sell it. Oh, you have to drive it. It is.
But never to get anywhere.
I'm just giving you the car. You have it. You have to pay insurance on it, but the insurance is the same on both cars. The financial aspect is totally taken out of it.
And
I know my
sell?
answer. Huh?
I don't know.
I know my answer on that.
I know your answer is Beetle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's so wrong. You want to talk about irrational, right? You're talking about, a V12 manual fucking
carbon fiber object of art.
Right. Versus a mass-produced pile of shit that was, instigated by a Nazi.
Several
of them. Many Nazis.
A number.
It's just mind-blowing to me how much you could want a car for completely irrational reasons based on just...
I think I would choose the Zonda, but it is obviously a tough decision.
I'm going to bludgeon you with a fucking cup holder. We'll talk about that more next week.
I'll tell you, I can tell you why about the Beetle. For me, the Beetle evokes the 356 because I have a lot of time in 356s.
Yeah, but I didn't offer you a 356.
I know, but what I would do is every time I experience it, I would want it to be a 356. And there's certain characteristics of the 356 that I adore that the Beetle doesn't possess. And so I think that every time I drove the Beetle, I would be like, it's not a 356. The Beetle was slightly terrifying in some respects.
Slightly.
Severely terrifying
Yes,
in some respects. And in those exact respects, the 356 is really a pleasure.
But I think you also drove a Beetle on a racetrack only.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, but the way that I would drive a Porsche, which is to go haul ass on a twisty road, I would want to do the same thing in a Beetle because it looks...
Oh, God, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
No, I would
But if
not.
I had something that sounded and felt like that, the thing about the Beetle that so evokes the 356 is the sound of the engine, the character of the powertrain, the feel of the shifter. And so my brain, because I'd driven one old Beetle before, which was a 1943 Nazi mobile, actually. An actual Nazi mobile.
Oh, of course. You would like, I've never driven a Beetle, but I have driven a KDF wagon.
Yeah. It was one of the, they made 2,000 or 3,000 during the war that weren't the Jeep-shaped ones. That weren't Kugelwagens. Yeah, that were actually the sedan Beetle. So it looks like a Beetle, but it was, and you could only get one if you were like a high-ranking Nazi party member, because it was a car that you'd drive around in the city or whatever used as a regular car. Nobody in World War II in Germany did that. Anyway, so I'd only driven one Beetle before, and and I've driven dozens of 356s. So when I get in that Beetle and I hear what it sounds like and I feel the shifter, I'm like, oh, it's a 356. And then I go around a corner, I'm like, scary.
I don't understand what the hell was happening. I mean, I understand swing axle means the car wants to roll, and it wanted nothing more than to throw itself on its back, spin around, and actually act like a dead Beetle and kill the passengers inside.
Like some scene out of Herbie.
Yeah. I want a Beetle with an independent rear suspension swap or something.
Drive a 356, actually.
No, I don't want to. Honestly, the Beetle had nothing to do with the way it drove.
No,
it
of course,
everything.
obviously.
It's the intricacy of that interior that really got me. So standing out, looking at this black car from the outside with these beautiful curves and the tiny little delicate lights and all the rest of the stuff, my first automotive love was a Beetle. I bought a Super Beetle when I was 14. I bought a 1300 when I was 16. I did not have a license either of those times, so I never legally drove those cars or
at all. Of course, obviously, and certainly not in Mexico. I mean, or anywhere.
Definitely not. Statute of limitations is so far past. But I never really drove them. And since then I've driven one Beetle, and it was slightly later. I think it was a 70 or 71, and I drove it in Palm Springs, and it was 140 degrees outside, and it was just straight road and whatever. This one, there's just something about the way this car looked, and then I got inside. And it was the inside. It's the fact that there's no plastic. Plastic hadn't been invented yet, right? Yeah. So everything is metal, chrome, bakelite. Yep. And it is just gorgeous. Or that rattan. It has
the
that
wicker shelf under the dashboard where you put your handbag or whatever.
You go around a 0.1 G corner and you want to fly out the door. There's no restraints. There's no whatever. It's just everything I don't like about cars, but in the most charming, beautiful. Yeah. I never thought of those cars as art, and they are rolling art.
Yeah, I totally agree. The detailing and just the way things used to be made. This is why sort of pedestrian American cars from the 50s sort of do exactly the same thing. They're just the way that things had to be made back then. Now retrospectively,
and not even had to. The thing that I loved about the American cars is they had the same thing as the Beetle. If this is how it has to be made, so it will be metal and it will be chrome and it will be whatever. But friends of mine had a '58 Mercury Park Lane, and it was mauve. There's no other word for this color. But horrendous car to drive, but I genuinely was upset when they sold it because I couldn't buy it. And it's so nothing that I would ever want. Yeah. But the interior of that car was so space age, gorgeous, fabulous with fucking brocade and
retro futuristic.
Holy shit.
Spaceship. Yeah. All of the optimism about America winning the space race, and there's so much, like I was saying before, culture that is embodied by that being in that car transports you to a different sort of era, of course, but also political and philosophical mindset about what is America and what is America's place in the world, and how, the Cold War and baby booming consumption and
want to talk about
the economy.
An optimistic time in history. That a Mercury. We're not talking about a Cadillac. Yeah. We're talking Mercury had an interior that was that fabulous.
Yeah. It is optimism incarnate.
boiled down into brocade.
It's a physical manifestation of optimism.
That drove like shit.
Yeah.
Because that was what was important
The
at the
DS
time, right?
is like that too, I think. The Citroën DS is all about, it is an incredibly optimistic vision for the future.
Didn't drive as bad as the Mercury.
No, it doesn't.
But, yeah.
It doesn't. But in terms of like the way that like this vision for the future and like how much promise the future holds, the DS does the same thing for me.
Yeah, that I can see. Interesting.
Anyway, we were supposed to talk about Car Week.
We are. We're talking about
sort of.
We drove a Pagani.
Yep, we drove a Pagani. We drove a Ferrari. What else happened at Car?
I didn't drive any other cars. I just sort of ran around from event to event to event, and it was a bit of a slog because I had sort of forgotten my decree that I made. So this was my 15th year at Car Week, and about 10 years ago, I decided I wasn't going to do anything manufacturer related at all, and it's because Phyllis. First of all, I went there as a car enthusiast to hang out with my car friends and interact with cars and learn about different cars, learn new things about old cars, and meet new old people. Yes. And I loved this week, and it very quickly turned into, BMW's having this press conference, and then Maserati's having a dinner.
There are now announcements of new models, which is baffling to me.
Like M5 Touring made its debut there.
To me, Car Week is about like vintage races and Concours d'Elegance and like showing off old cars instead of like manufacturers going in there and sort of corporatizing everything.
Right. And I firmly believe that everyone that goes to Car Week should be in an old car that they're genuinely afraid of breaking down in, and they should be unair conditioned and miserable and smelly and all of these things. And it was the year that Kia put a tent up on the grounds on Peter Hay Hill, right across from the Concours, that I'm like, this is disgusting. Yeah. And nothing against Kia. I mean, it's certainly now Hyundai Kia is knocking it out of the park. But I'm sorry, you have no business being here. You know who I want to see? And Spiker had been in that tent the year before. And even that was, okay, that's a bespokey kind of, high dollar car that does speak to these people. No one that was showing $1 million or $10 million car at Pebble Beach was going to consider driving a Kia Sophia. And so that was when I said, hold on, this is all wrong. I shouldn't be encouraging their behavior by covering their new cars and going to their press conferences and all the rest of this shit when I don't believe they should be here. So I stopped. And this year I forgot that. So I signed myself up for a bunch of different things and ran myself ragged the first 2 days, running from place to place. And then I was like, why do I hate this? Yeah. Like, why am I hating car? Oh, it has replaced the Detroit Auto Show. It's all press conferences and debuts. And
you did it wrong.
I did it wrong.
We had a great time.
Yeah. Next year I'm staying at your Airbnb, whether you like it or not.
You are very welcome. We're just...
That has been recorded and is now part of history. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just had like cool old cars coming and going to the house all week, and we're shuttling cars to places. And had a car that was going to Pebble, and we transited that over, and that was exciting in all the wrong ways. We got stuck in traffic in that, and so cool. We decided to spontaneously do a photo shoot with the Miura and a Lancia Stratos, and the owner of the Stratos was staying in 17 Mile Drive, and so we set up camp there because it was convenient for him, and then. I was really heartened to see this. I always worry that the old cars are going to be sort of lost by an entire generation. And we parked the Miura and the Stratos next to each other in one of those beach turnout things. And then I turned around and there were like 40, 50 people standing there with cameras. Like it just created a crowd around these cars. And it's nice to see that, these people are all, young spotters. They're all in their teens and 20s, and it's interesting to see that despite the fact that the newest of those cars was 50 years old, basically, that they still had the power to sort of draw people in the same way that, like a modern supercar would. So I was pleased to see that. But overall, we had a great time because we stayed closer to the true spirit. Yeah. But I was disappointed to see that there are just fewer people driving around in old cars than
what was that about?
It's
Everyone
a pain
was
in
in
the
a
ass.
fucking modern supercar.
Yeah. It's a pain in the ass. I know. I totally agree.
It should be a pain in the ass. It's the one time of the year that I'll park any one of my cars on any street anywhere and not have to worry about it because the guy parked next to me in the F50 doesn't want to door ding my Scirocco.
Yep. It's just, I think my, sort of, if you could plot my emotional excitement throughout the course of the week, some of the very highest points are when you're driving down the street and you're like, oh my fucking Lord, it's a whatever, driving down the street, just in public, being used.
Pre-coffee, ran 2 blocks after a Lotus Carlton. pre-coffee. Do you know what that means? I was in a shitty mood. It was fucking cold. It was time. Yeah, I was like, some asshole is driving a Lotus Carlton. And then I sort of was looking for him in this parking lot, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I've driven one of these cars. They're all identical. It's not like it's, there are like different colors and options. And what am I going to do? Lick the car when I get there? Speaking of that sense. But like, I'm not going to do it. But I just got so excited that somebody brought a Lotus Carlton.
Yeah. And it's like the only time ever that I've ever been driving the Miura, and then there's another one going the other way, and you're just like, hello, and you wave. And you're just like, what is this planet? It's a really cool experience. So I was disappointed to not see as many old cars in use being sort of transited around in. But we did our part. We were all of us in our Italian carbureted cars.
Leaking oil everywhere you went.
Yeah, we really made a mess of the driveway at the Airbnb. I feel really bad about that. But
most people, thankfully, most people don't care.
I hope that's true. But yeah, every single member of our team, except for, so we did have the service wagon, which also got a lot of enthusiastic response. The service livery roadside assistance 124 wagon. But everything else was Italian and carbureted that we were running around in. So
that's cool.
We were living the change that we want to see in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think I'm out of cars for Car Week. Every one of my cars has made it there. Has every one of your cars?
No, not every one of my cars, but I feel some responsibility to bring the most sort of interesting, memorable car that I have. So it's been, I brought the Giulietta twice, and I brought the Citroen. I brought the Miura this year because Haggerty was doing the retrospective at Motorlux on Marcello Gandini because he died, and they said, we need a Miura, so I brought the Miura down for that. And that car really does make you feel like $1 million when you drive around in it.
Two, actually.
Two.
I hope.
Yeah, but it's interesting to feel like the prettiest girl at the party in that car.
Did you see the Robin's Egg blue one that was for sale at Gooding?
Yes, that I actually did the write up for their catalog on that car. Really beautifully restored car.
It was on a blue carpet, and so I think that was a really big fuck up. I mean, I would have
because it read almost as white.
It almost looked white, and every time I took a picture of it, the camera sort of white balanced it to make it look almost white.
Yeah,
I want to see that thing on the road. Yeah. Oh, 2.516 Evo 2 Mercedes sold, both poorly.
Yeah,
did they not?
Yeah, that was surprising to me, and I can't explain it because I've sold a couple of those cars pretty strongly recently. I looked at one of them. It looked like it had, it was low kilometers and was very crisp, but I think it had probably had some paint work. Maybe that influenced things. But that's a sort of peculiar car that is maybe not fully established as a collector's item in the way that some more mainstream stuff is. You kind of got to be of a certain mindset to say, I'm going to spend $400,000 on a 4-cylinder car from the 80s that if you kind of just drive around in it and aren't really booking it, feels sort of pleasant, but not $400,000. And that's a car that, so I was interested to see that happen. That surprised me.
If they get down to 100, I could buy one. I could see myself doing that. Yeah. Just for the fucking wing.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't drive I don't say
it's a little bit different.
Oh, it drives differently, but I don't think better than my 2.3.
No, and it's certainly not, 8 times as good of an experience.
No, I don't think it is, but marginally more expensive. I think that'd be a fun one.
I totally agree. I went back and reviewed my notes on that experience, and it reminded me how special that car is. But you have to be hauling ass. Yeah. If you're not hauling ass, it's a fairly unremarkable.
It's a 190 with aftermarket suspension.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah,
I would kill for one of those cars, but. Still not there. They're going to have to drop by another 75% in value for me to do that, so I guess not.
Yep.
Although I do have one more space in the garage.
Because you sold a car?
Because of the Lotus, yeah. What do I do?
You're not actually thinking about filling this space.
No, I'm actually thinking about selling the Rover. Would you want to sell the Rover?
I did already. I sold my share of it to you.
I'm not asking you to do it. What I want more than anything else is somebody local to lose their shit over it when it's like parked at Safeway and run over and say, I will give you whatever you want for this car and promise you will have visitation rights. That's what I want. I don't want that car to go away, but I don't want to maintain. I am down to 10 cars, right? So technically I sold Vangina to Haggerty inside baseball, whatever. So I'm no longer fiscally responsible for Vangina, which makes me feel a lot better. And that's just as it should be because it's a company car. So I have 10 cars, one of which is an e-Golf that is asking for tires. Hey, Michelin, that's not going to work, but I'll try. Hey, Bridgestone, anyone.
Utopia.
No,
Otsu.
I want something.
Westlake.
I would like something that grips as well as those Pilot Sport 4S's, but gives me some of my fucking range back.
People in hell want ice water.
I want ice water. Anyway, but that car mostly doesn't need any maintenance, which means I'm maintaining 9 cars. And now I don't have a single OBD2 car. So I don't have a single car that can tell me what it's pissed off about. And it's just
I guess
too
the
much.
newest of which is 30 years old, basically.
My newest car is now the
850. And
which
it's
is 30
30
years old this year. Yeah.
Besides the e-Golf.
So it's 49 is the oldest and 30 is the newest. They're old. Yeah. And they're all, knock on wood, they're all reliable. None of these cars have really done anything terrible. But I'm not driving any one of them enough. And so like every time I drive the Rover, I'm like, I love this. I love that it's such a different experience from everything I own. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, well, I want to build a 4-liter psychopath, cammed, NASCAR sounding, straight piped, miserable thing with a limited slip and, do some stupid shit to this car. And then the master cylinder fails and it's not fucking available anywhere in the world.
It's okay, you can rebuild them.
I have a rebuild kit coming on the way, but the problem there is I just bled the brakes. Like I did it in May. Okay, this is I'm sure why the master failed, because new fluid cleans everything and therefore breaks everything. But I'm like, all right, I don't need this because I have, thanks to you, another car that I know now that has 13-year-old brake fluid and another one that's got 11-year-old brake fluid. Like it's too much. It's too much. And so, yeah, somebody in the Bay Area needs to buy.
Life is tough.
Life is.
Buy Jason's Rover. Make your life tough.
We have that. I'm sorry. We found the nicest Rover.
We did. It's got to be the world's most reliable. I mean, I cannot believe that we did that. I'm still like, if there were not photo documentation that we made that trip, I would not believe that it happened because 1,600.
Is that 1 year or 2 years ago?
1 year.
It's 1 year. 1 year ago. So in 1 year, I've driven that car quite a bit, and it also was my Pebble car last year. So it just did normal, heavy duty traffic and everything else. The master has started to leak. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all that car. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's leaking oil. Like remember when we got it, it leaked. Like you could see a couple spots of oil on the engine that weren't touching the ground. Mm-hmm. Now there's a couple drops on the ground.
It's a good one.
Big deal.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Anyway, maybe I'll still have it for next year for car week, and maybe I'll drive it again because it was quite a nice car for car week.
Otherwise, you have to find something else to drive to car week or start recycling, which is, I think, what most people do.
Oh, it's Scirocco's time again. It's been a couple of years. Yeah. Or Cabby. Cabby's the best, too. 4 people, drop top. Little, you can park it anywhere, a lot of ground clearance. Just park it over a stump that an F50 won't fit over. See? Or a Pagani. That's why I want a Beetle.
Well, let's find Jason a Beetle for car week. Terrifying.
No more VWs. I can't do that.
Yep, that's fair. All right, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Carmudgeon Show that allegedly, nominally, was about Car Week.
And you talked, yes, it was.
We'll see you next week.
Sounds great.